Welcome to the Colony Archive, a review and analysis on the politics of empire and resistance. So I had a long conversation with Sina Rahmani, the founder of The East is a Podcast. It's a popular anti-colonial podcast that has been around for several years now. And we talked about many things. We covered one of our favorite subjects, the Iranian diaspora. We also covered how Iranians feel about the politics of resistance that the Islamic Republic has waged for the past 40 plus years. And we also talked about Yemen and the broader geopolitical developments in the Middle East and the direction that it might take in the future. And so the interview has been split into two parts. You can catch the first part on Sina Rahmani's The East is a Podcast YouTube channel and also on his podcast platforms. And the second part is here. You can watch the second part here. But before doing so, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below and you subscribe to the Colony Archive.
It's so cartoonish, that like we have to have this conversation, that we can't just like talk about Iran, like we can't just, be two Iranian dudes like talking Iran stuff. That like we have to go through this like deep like hermeneutical rigmarole, like every single time about this Gusano said this and the monarchists hate this, and it must be so tedious for the normals to have to go through this. That like, why do Iranians have to be so meta in their conversations about the country? And you realize that this is a consequence of being besieged, because everything comes through the funhouse mirror of mostly Zionist controlled media, like everything about Iran, that is that like, and the way they do that control is particularly like genius or evil or anything. Which is to say, they use a bunch of prop up figures who are insane, mouth frothing losers who have nothing to contribute to the world except for their own political resentment. And they get elevated into media figures because they want the world to see the worst of us. They want the world to see like the stupid chud that the right wing fascist Iranian troll that they brought onto the Mehdi Hassan thing.
Oh God, with a mustache.
Yeah, it looks like a Rocky and Bullwinkle villain, someone said online. Like they want people like that representing Iranians. Like that's a way to grind the insult that's salt in the wounds, right, of being besieged. And you realize that, like we are trapped here. Less you, obviously, because you go there and you live there and you made a show from there, sort of. You made a show while living there. Let's put it that way. And that itself is its own. So like I think people underestimate the costs of what that does to not just to them over there, but over here too, is that the impoverishment of our conversation around Iran, which makes like people like my show, frankly, like, so I think mostly rare. Like, I think it's more common now, but you remember this, you've been with me since the beginning. It was odd for people to defend Iran back then, although that's not true, because Rouhani was still in charge back then when I launched my show. And so Iranian libs were still team players. Let's put it that way. They still didn't embrace full-blown, I hate to put it this way, but it's true, but full-blown revolutionary, zeal. They hadn't embraced it yet. But now libs, since Women Life Freedom, have gone over the deep end. It's interesting now, even though one of theirs is in charge, like a Rouhanian character, like him at least. Maybe he doesn't have the charisma as Rouhani.
No, I don't think Rouhani had that much charisma either.
I mean, but compared to Pezeshkian has the charisma of like a bag of pofak. Like he's got like he's just like he's like kind of like a I don't know his like weak avuncular thing, like the avuncular thing. I don't know how Iranian libs fell for this. How did Iranians fall for this?
He's just so out of touch. I mean, like when he was on Tucker Carlson, he kept talking about like peace and tranquility with the U.S. I'm just like, what the hell are you talking about?
Roddy, do you think this is 1998? Like, did you get transported into the body of Mohammed Khatami? Like, are you going to talk about like what was the thing that he
Dialogue
famously
of
brought up?
civilizations. گفتگو تمدن‌ها.
I don't think diaspora exists. I'm going to go out and say it. I don't think I don't think because see the thing is like what is a word, right? Like a word is just this kind of it's a collection of like fucking consonants and vowels that you piece together that shapes that in your head and everybody else's supposedly. Um, it's like a lasso that ties itself around something big or something small. But when you're talking about like populations of human beings, like that lasso you are throwing, like it's doing so much work. Like diaspora is like 8 letters, and you're talking about like hundreds of thousands of people scattered across dozens of countries speaking all kinds of second languages, second and first languages. A ton of them, like us, generational. Like, I mean, I guess you and I were both born in Iran, so it's different. But I guess like people like people born afterwards, like you have now probably fourth generation Iranians being born in the West, or maybe third generation, at least third generations, because you have um, the people who were born in the 80s in the West who were born there, they're having kids. They had kids maybe in 2000s if they were, normal. And those people are having kids probably right now. So, you have lots of people who became the country they were a part of. And some of those people are where they go to like recruit compradors. So it's like, I don't think the category and like debating and like looking through, the like tea leaves of this thing called diaspora. I don't like nothing good can come of this. Like there is not like it's only the grifter class and people who make a career talking about it are doing something, and people with an agenda like Zionists, like they're the ones who go and they hijack every single community project. Like it gets riven by the sort of besieged. Here's the reality: Iran is let's say Iran as a country in the West is a persona non grata, right? We are an illegal subject. We are like that poor Mehdi Karimi Nasiri or whatever his name was, the guy who RIP, he was in the Paris airport for 30 years, um, just like wandering. Charles de Gaulle, he died actually.
Although apparently he was kind of like he could have gotten papers and lived in a country, but he just lied
Yes,
to.
this is the. It's a strange. It's actually it's a sad. I don't want to make too much of the analogy, but he does. There is unfortunately a lesson in his story. So in case you didn't know, I think his name was Mehdi Karim Naseri. I want to say Naseri. I know it was like Mehdi, something like that. And he was on his way to the UK. He transited through Paris, through Charles de Gaulle Airport. He lost his papers. And so and then he was unable to leave France because then he wouldn't be able to get back I don't know, for whatever reason. Oh, he had no legal rights to enter the country. So that's why so he ended up staying in this, becoming a resident of the airport, of the terminal, the departures terminal or something, because he was through security. And he became like, I don't know, he's a sad story of what happened to, I think, a generation mostly of our parents. But you could sort of make him into like a case study for like a wider story of Iranians in the West because by the end of it, he had achieved a certain kind of cultural celebrity, and people had sort of worked on his case, and he had attained. He was given a French residency. He could have left the airport, but at that point, he probably was so institutionalized to where he was staying, and he was safe there. He knew that life world, that he said, no, I'm insisting on going to the UK. My name isn't whatever, Mehdi or something. It's, what is it, Sir Alfred or something like that. and he would make people call him Sir Alfred, and like he really thought he was some like British guy by the end, and he was just lost. And you there is there I'm gonna do this. I shouldn't do this. I know better than to do this, but there is a character of Iranian out there who encapsulates this kind of figure, who encapsulates this kind of Western oriented, kind of semi lost, nowhere, he can't be found, in the sense of like he can't find himself in his own identity, and so is forced to wander through the halls of the West as like a second-rate citizen, denied of rights. I mean, this is a big-time exaggeration. Lots of Iranians live fruitful lives in the West. They do fine. They go back and forth. It's no problem. And this is one of the issues I think you were talking about, is that the being, we do circulate around the world, and especially in the West, and we go to these countries, and people leave Iran, they get passports, they go to the West, they leave, they come back, they bring all kinds of things with them. And so that contradiction of being besieged at certain places and not being besieged, and having that life tantalizingly close to you in the form of relatives and whatever, you're one phone call away from the West. You don't feel cut off, but you are cut off in a lot of profound and painful ways. So that's what brought us up in the chat, that you brought up one day, that really, since then, it's been haunting me. It's funny. I didn't, you like hear things in your brain sometimes, and they like ricochet, and you think about the consequences of that. And it's just, I've been thinking about that. I had known it. I had known what you were talking about. I had seen the behavior in my relatives, at least. And especially because like I'm like, especially me being someone who defends Iran publicly as part of his job, even in a sense, because it is part of my professional career to be a media person. And I have chosen to, in my view, defend Iran, and defend specifically the nature and the character of the Islamic Republic. For, warts and all, it has achieved a lot of good, and that good protected us in a sense from this Israeli assault, this American Zio-America unprovoked war of aggression. And that Islamic system, that Islamic Republican system, and its defense shield that it erected despite sanctions, overcoming the siege, using, in what would be in a lot of ways like an amazing story, right? Because the story of Iranian missiles, it's like they got one missile from either DPRK or Libya or both, and they basically reverse engineered them. And 40 years later, you now have one of the most advanced missile fleets in the world, such that the entire combined forces of the West had to like work together to, with its entity tool as its main sort of like delivery mechanism, to unleash this insane and also, creative, let's put it that way, assault on Iranian missile capabilities, recruiting a network of traders and agents, and building up these abilities using, various satellite internet tools to burrow and, create these, all kinds of things, which to be honest, I haven't even looked into that deeply yet. Like, I haven't really gone into like the Iranian side of things, at least from in terms of being inside the country. Like, I should be watching more like Iranian TV right now these days. Like, I have access to it, but I feel so like I'm still kind of in shock about everything that happened. So I can't even imagine what it's like for Iranians over there. And soon enough, you'll be going, so you'll be able to see and catch the vibe there directly. But at least from what you hear of people, what's the general mood there?
Yeah. So, I mean, with the general mood, I would say, so again, I think it's divided. I mean, we talk about all the demographic and ideological divides. And I think with a lot of people, they blame their own governments, like I was saying earlier in our chat. That they say that why did we get involved in the Palestinian issue to begin with, and it's our own fault to be suffering this insecurity, and even though we were able to deter the attack to some level and contain it within 12 days, they're still mad at their own government, and a lot of people are mad at the leadership, saying that they should just change course. But the problem is that they don't really have solutions, because what is Iran going to do at this point? Because if they negotiate, the US does not negotiate in good faith, as we saw US and Israel blew up the negotiations. So if they negotiate, this is the result, war. And if they don't negotiate, they also get attacked. So in a sense, what is the Iranian leadership going to do? And what I told a lot of Iranians is that um, if you want to be a country like Jordan or Egypt, you should not have, or Turkey, you should not have had a anti-imperialist revolution, because once you have an anti-imperialist revolution, going back to your premise that you either resist or do not resist, so once you have an anti-imperialist revolution, there's no going back. You have to go to the very end. Because this is what I tell a lot of Iranians again, is that even if the crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, the beloved resistance figure in the West, if he returns to Iran tomorrow,
he doesn't even want to come back. Who wants to work from home? He wants to Skype. He wants to be the Skype king, Zoom king.
He just want to be, and I think
History's
ultimately
first king through Zoom.
he just wants to live in DMV and barbecue with his kids. And so, I mean, but I mean, let's say that he's genuine. He really wants to go back to Iran and make Iran great again, MIGA. And then Masih Alinejad becomes, his main advisor, and they both return to Iran. Chances are the U.S. is not gonna trust Iran for another several decades, and Israel is gonna bomb all the Iranian. What's happening to Syria? So they're gonna bomb the Iranian defense infrastructure even after Reza Pahlavi comes back, and the U.S. is not gonna trust Iran for a while. And so that's why I tell them, I'm like, at this point, there's no real going back, because once you go anti-imperialist and once you take this resistance approach, there is really no going back, especially for a country like Iran that's has the size of a population, has cultural and religious and geopolitical influence. It's not going to be easy going back. So that's why I tell them. But yeah, the mood is that. So it's either one demographic is like, it's our own fault. What the hell have we done? But the other demographic is like, we actually learn now that you cannot trust the West. You cannot negotiate with them. So we should actually build up our defenses and be ready to engage Israel again if they were to attack us. And so going based on this problem or issue, I want to get your take on this. And I know it's not easy to predict. I mean, I know you train also in the humanities. I don't think you were not a historian, were you? You were more like in the literature, comparative lit. Is that correct? Yeah. So with that, with LitComp, you're probably more inclined to give predictions. We don't have to give predictions, but I mean, how do you assess the current state? I mean, do you think Israel has the upper hand, or is it the resistance countries, Iran, Yemen, that might have the upper hand?
I don't know. I don't think. I think they're these. This situation we're in is quite unique because you have an entity that is completely unbound by any kind of convention, any kind of moral conviction. You're fighting against moralists, psychotic freaks. Like, imagine yourself in the commanding and like some sort of senior position on the IRGC, and you're trying to develop with, working with the Artesh, working with the the Security Council, your political people above you, like trying to negotiate a country of 90 million with all these differing forces, parts of it probably, like being infiltrated by the enemy. So, and you probably know that. So makes you wonder sometimes, you put that in your calculations and you think, and meanwhile, that country too, on top of that, has the most insane psychotic backer to ever exist, of the most violent empire, which is clearly flushing itself down the toilet and partly using this entity, which is so obsessed with you and destroying you, as its main delivery mechanism and its like policy tool.
Yeah, it's like a crossover between Epstein Premium and a supervillain, or I don't know what crossover.
Oh yeah, like this is like Iranians. Like I don't think people understand the scale of what they're facing. Like, imagine Israel, but make it a country of 300 million people and 800 bases around the world, and like that's the U.S. Now, mind you, it's like the U.S.'s power does make it weak, right? Which is to say, its regional base network of regional bases are all within Iran's grasp, right? The thing with Iran's sort of deterrent strategy and it does have a deterrent strategy, which the Zionists decided to forego, which they decided to accept the consequences of, and those were pretty serious, dire consequences. They got a huge blow, not just literally, but figuratively, to their national project. So the feeling of safety to them is much easier to destroy than it is for us in the sense that their safety is tied to their economic and political development, right? Because the West needs a safe port to park all of its big, expensive, shiny assets, all of its shiniest capital. It needs to park somewhere safe. And if you're like a bloodthirsty capitalist and you're looking to park a few $billion in some, like tech chip factory, are you going to be like, yeah, Haifa looks good today, buddy. I'm hearing good things about Haifa. Dude, like that's not happening, right? And so the resistance has managed to poison the well of Zionist and Western, like military industrial sort of project, right? In the sense that they can't do what they need to do. They can't expand. Like a Western power, a settler colonial power is expansionist in nature. And so its inability to expand is partly the reason why we are here, right? That like they need to expand into Gaza. They needed to expand into Syria so badly that they took what was clearly a defeat on October 7th and turned it into a massive calamity, which gave them the political will, right, which they then projected onto their enemies, right, like all the hoaxes about October 7th and the fact that it was a mass Hannibal event that they have admitted to, that they hid the evidence of after the fact, that they used that to manufacture consent, both domestically and internationally, for what turned out to be a genocidal land grab, which has failed in its objectives and only achieved the genocidal part. Right. And so that's
Well, can I make one point? Because it was very interesting what you said about Haifa and these Western companies not being this perception that you cannot really invest in Israel or take your shiny assets there, if I understood you correctly. And I feel like that's going to be, all these big consulting firms like McKinsey and others are going to build that into their analysis that you can, Israel is more.
They can't even get shipping. They can't even get shipping containers to the country. Like the Yemen, the brilliance. Let's understand what the Yemenis have done. They're tracking every ship that lands in occupied Palestine, right? Because they go through the Mediterranean, right? And they have, and so they're tracking the companies that are going there and they're saying, oh, you broke our sanctions. You broke our siege. We imposed sanctions on this port and you're breaking it. So you don't get to travel through our waters. Like this is, and when you look at how they control their waters, the Suez Canal is very important to shipping companies. So it's like, and so in effect, they are besieging the entity and companies can't do business with them. They can't, it's hard enough for a country like Israel to exist. It has to be propped up through a massive web, an international flow of goods and services and people and capital primarily to keep this country going. And so when something like October 7th happens, and then which tempted them into this quagmire, and it got them into a quagmire, and then they have since expanded their attacks on their wars to flex on their enemies because they feel like, well, this is the time to strike. And they are correct in a sense because the U.S. weakens every day. The U.S. weakens every day. Their main source of power is weakening every day. If you saw your main source of power weakening every day, if you saw the country that you rely on for everything of that gives you any kind of power over your enemies, if you see that country is fading from the story every day, faster and faster, wouldn't you accelerate your plans? Wouldn't you do things? Wouldn't you do things that were not good for your long-term health? And that's what I think is happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I want to actually say in response, because on the one hand, you're talking about Israel no longer being a safe, nice place for these Westerner investors to go. And also, I remember when I was studying Arabic in Arab countries, oftentimes through American university programs, like all the American kids who were there, when they were sick of, the kind of modest, iron cage Arab culture, they would actually travel to Israel and go to the Tel Aviv beaches and be like, okay, I can actually breathe freely for a week until I resume my studies again, in Jordan, Oman, whatever Arab country that's more closed. But yeah, I think they're no longer going to do that. All these American kids to go to Jordan to study Arabic, they're not going to cross over to Israel because they're going to be like, it's not safe anymore. So there's definitely that. But I think in a way that actually gives a military advantage and a strategic advantage to Israel. So even though their economy might tank a little bit, but when it comes to the military aggression, I think it might increase, because the idea is that, sure, we're no longer going to vacation or invest in Israel as much, but we will just fund it with so much weapon and let it be, our number one goon. And also the Israelis are going to become tougher because, thus far, especially the more recent settlers from Europe and the West and from America, a lot of them leave, but the rest of them are going to stay, especially the ones that have been there for longer. And they're going to become tougher, and they're going to be, they're going to be like, okay, it's okay, I'm not going to have the European quality of life, but I'm going to stay here. And I'm just going to get the weapons and the funding from the US, and I'm just going to go completely rogue and violent and aggressive and just attack every country in my proximity, including Jordan and Egypt, that will eventually have anti-Israeli governments. So I think in a way what you're describing from an economic perspective might be bad. But
dude, you're giving those countries way too much credit. It's clear.
No, in the long term, I'm talking about.
No, but but it's true though. Okay, in the long term, in a sense that what you're saying, I agree with you in a sense that, like, if you take out one of those puzzle pieces, like that whole Jenga thing of Zionism falls. Like, you take out Jordanian compliance, you take out Egyptian, compliance at Rafah. You take out all the pieces that are required. You take out the Lebanese government and its refusal to actively engage the Iranian government in say, deploying some fucking air defenses, but they're not allowed to because they're controlled. All those vassal states require deep amount of puppetry to ensure that the feelings of the indigenous people who live there, who are from there, they don't get their say.
But that's what I'm saying, that if you take out a piece of the puzzle, if you take out, say, Jordan and change the leadership, Israel is going to wage such a violent war and kill thousands, if not millions of people. So that's my point. So I understand what you're saying, but before it falls, is gonna wage so much violence in the region.
Unfortunately, I think Israel falls before Jordan does, in the sense that, like, they will prop up those governments until, like, end times. Like, they're gonna do the end of Terminator 2 with the fucking Tomato King. He's gonna go down into lava, and that's it. Like, they'll wait until the last minute because it's not keeping down the population of the region. Is the entire geopolitical strategy of the West. This is everything. Israel is just the, like, cornerstone piece of it, but everything, their entire government, all the military aid, like, are we even sure the Jordanian Air Force exists? Are we even sure that these air forces that are dressed up as native militaries, like, how much control do they have over them? Like, I don't think we understand the Luffles.
Yeah, no, I mean, the British invented the Jordanian army. Joseph Massad.
Yes, Jordan specifically.
Has a big book about it.
Less so with Egypt. Egypt is the tragedy of Egypt is you take a proud Arab anti-imperialist population that's proudly anti-imperialist, and in less than 30 years, you've created a broken society. The, like, economic indicators, like, they look like, a disaster. The country is an ecological, social mess. They had a democratic revolution. It was immediately reversed by the military, which means that it wasn't a democratic revolution at all, by the way, because it only existed because the media, the military allowed it to exist. So if you're which then has consequences down the line where they're like, oh, they're just going to shoot us. Look what they did to the Ikhwanis. They're just going to shoot us and no one will care. Nothing will change. They're going to do what they did to the Great March of Return. Everybody will be Palestinians in the end. And so part of the strategy of Gaza is to demonstrate for everyone in the region, this is what happens when you resist too much. This is what happens when you challenge us. This is what happens. We're going to make an example of you. So, I mean, the fact that they've kept fighting, the fact that they keep inflicting casualties, that the Rafah, which they're supposed to have taken long ago, is still a graveyard for Zionist occupying troops. that they're getting like blown up by locally made explosives, right? So like it's the teach a man to fish strategy that the IRGC guys helped install in less than like basically 20 years. And like 20 years, like this war, I think is a result of 2 decades of preparation, of radically realigned with the help of key figures who are all martyrs now, by the way, Qasem Soleimani, Imad Mughniya, like all kinds of dudes down the line, Hassan Nasrallah, right? Like this is we're seeing a lot of Yahya Sinwar, obviously, like Muhammad Deif, like these things developed historically. And you can look at the ruins of Gaza and say, this is defeat. And it's tempting to do that. And a lot of people on our side, because that's what imperialists show you is the consequences of resistance. But victory is not making them look like you. Victory is defeating them. Defeating them is something that, and defeating them is what Palestinian resistance is doing, because you defeat their objectives, because their objectives are to take the land, cleanse the people. The people are steadfast. They bomb them and they refuse to leave, and they issue warnings and they refuse to leave. So that strategy of and killing, you can't bomb 2 million people out of existence. You can try, and they certainly are trying, but the fact that they stay on their land, they stay in their houses, and they wait and they face down a violent machine while being starved, while being denied medical treatments. And so, the fact that they say Gaza is like what awaits you, I would say that the people of Gaza are like the best of our humanity, and they teach us about humanity. And I don't mean that in like a asinine, like liberal way. I mean that really. Like every day I text with my friend Mohammed in Gaza. I'm gonna add his fundraiser to the description, and we're chit chatting. He shows me what he's up to, like the level of humanity in this people, and the level of inhumanity that Zionists show, and they show themselves to the world. I'm not like a lib humanist. I'm not saying like the truth shall set you free, but I don't know. Maybe the truth does set you free. Like maybe the world watching this entity, and maybe seeing them and seeing what all the countries who are taking its side, refusing to do nothing. And maybe this is like what I can give Iranians, that like your country is on the right side of history. It may have all kinds of failings. It may have failed you personally. And what do I know? What do I know? Like I never lived there for.
The response of the Iranian libs would be that I'd rather be like the French and the British and the Americans and just colonize and exploit the world and become rich.
You're probably, I know you're joking, and they'll probably, maybe some of them are listening to this and they're like, "That's not fair, Navi. That's not fair." I don't know why they talk like Texans in my head. Iranian libs sound like Texans. I don't know why, but you're doing a what's the word, a straw man, but like in the sense that like I do think that not all Iranian libs are helpless. I believe, here's an interesting thing: people who had given me shit on Twitter like wrote to me and apologized to me, like over like in the midst of the war. I don't check my DMs. I don't check like whatever. Like I don't check my DM requests, and I had no. And I think that there are people out there who are coming around to the view that like, defending the Islamic Republic from the West is not some categorically impossible task. It's not something that like is unthinkable. That like it's actually very normal to defend the country where you're from the attacks of from empires. That you can look past grievances to something bigger. And I think that there will be Iranians who will always reject the Islamic Republic, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But I think the majority of Iranians look at Syria, they look at Libya, and they're not stupid. They know what they actually are interested in. And if anything, it's us Westoid Iranians who are the main audience for things like Women, Life, Freedom. Because Women, Life, Freedom I think they give license to a certain class of media people first and foremost. I think the accomplishments now, mind you, mandatory hijab doesn't seem to be a thing anymore in Iran. At least from what I can tell, from what I see from the streets, it doesn't seem like mandatory hijab. But with that being said, it was headed that way anyways, from what I
No,
understand.
when I was there were still the gashed to an extent, gashed being the so-called moral police, and they would give verbal warnings. But I didn't see them take anyone. But the moral police still exist. But the thing is, they've definitely relaxed the enforcement since the protests, and you see a lot of women that just take off their scarves and walk with their hair out. That's like I before 2022, I would not see that so frequently.
Yes.
But now, like on the streets and the cafes, you see it everywhere.
I mean, that there is a question that I always had, and you were living there. That even before Women Life Freedom, there was that push. There was I would see that, like, I mean, I guess maybe it was the rich. It was a class thing too, that the rich areas didn't get as heavily policed as other areas.
I mean, the
And that's
rich
something I've
areas, the
heard.
rich areas do too. It's not really about the neighborhood. It's more about if you don't have a car, the chances of you running into the moral police is higher, and the rich people have cars. But if you're taking the metro, because a lot of times they hang out in the metros, the moral police, they wait there. And if you're taking the metro, you can get caught. But if you're in your car, I mean, there are cameras actually. And what's funny is I had a professor and he had long hair. Um, and he got a ticket in
I
his
see where this is going.
yeah, so because he was in a car and they thought that he was a woman without the hijab, and the camera just caught him and sent him a ticket, being like, "Oh, you were not observing the hijab," and he's like, I'm a dude. What is going on here? So
So did he have to go to the court and say, "I'm a dude"?
I think he paid the fine, or I don't know what he did, or maybe he just sent his ID card being like, I'm male. So, but yeah, I mean, so even if you're a car, you could still get a ticket. But yeah, chances are that if you're on foot and you're taking public transit or in the big squares, you might run into trouble more often. So in that sense, it's a class thing.
I mean, I guess my question, I guess the issue is that, like, the wider question of mandatory hijab. First of all, it's something that doesn't affect either of us since we're both dudes. But, like, so it's more important. It's more important for us to like to say that. So, like, whatever we have to say, it's of secondary, tertiary importance. But I think ultimately, like, the wider question it poses, which is more relevant, is like, what is the character of the Islamic? What is the nature of the word Islamic in Islamic Republic? How seriously do you take that? And how seriously do you interpret hijab as part of an Islamic dress code? And these are deep questions for Iranian society that preceded the Islamic Republic, that will follow, that maybe will, like, antecede, proceed, I don't remember. Like, that may follow Islamic Republic, if there is some, whatever comes after the Islamic Republic, who knows, either next year or 50 years from now or 200 years, who knows. But in the sense that all countries and political systems evolve, and they evolve over time, and this phase of Iranian sovereignty, of Iranian governance, let's say, the phase of the Islamic Republic, we are facing its, like, most probably its most challenging time, I would say. I think this is even more challenging than the 80s, which sounds crazy because there was, like, a crazy war that lasted not 12 days but 8 years. But in the sense that we've reached the point where our enemies have become so openly bloodthirsty and clearly have shown their intent on bulldozing the country as much as possible to live up to their desires to, like, get those resources, because capitalism is ailing. It needs Iran's resources. Like, that's what we have to understand. It's not just oil, it's also all kinds of precious minerals, and it needs China to be blocked just as much. Right. And so we cannot, I think, and this is another thing I would say to Iranian libs, is don't underestimate their cravenous desires to feast on our country like some sort of, vampiric monster, going at it as some, like, fallen horse. Like,
What is crazy here, if your premise is correct, that in a way they want regime change, or they want domination of Iran because of the capitalistic markets. What's crazy is that the nuclear deal, to some extent, achieved that, but they still went against the very own nuclear deal that they had made themselves.
Yes,
So that's
exactly.
the crazy thing.
Yes. So even when you make a deal with them that suits them, and also, I mean, so, like, the thing about, like, my view on the JCPOA, Barjam, is that it's a solution. It's a solution to the problem that liberal Iranians pose to the system, to the Islamic Republican system, right? Which they, justifiably, which is you want to be independent. Independent countries deal and trade with other independent countries. That's part of being independent. If you want to do this, you have to follow by the following task. You have to sacrifice the following things. The XYZ, cameras in the nuclear, whatever, submitting these plans, just things that other countries don't have to do, namely our enemy country, Israel, does not have to subject to them, but we do. And the Iranian libs said, look, you want to be like a more normal country. You want to get out of this extremely powerful economic vice grip. Here's a way. We can do it. We've negotiated this. This is what we can present you. Sure, you give up some things you don't want, but you get a lot back. So you do that and you present that to people and you make it the basis of your entire governance strategy. You make it everything. Javad Zarif was like the most interviewed man on the planet for the 2010s, man. That guy got so much press. But what happened in the end? They burned it down themselves. You spend years building a house with these freak, psychotic, meth head Europeans, and then to civilize them and teach them to live normally and be normal and try to be slightly human. And in 3 fucking years, not even a bachelor's degree you could get in that period of time. Okay? In less than 3 years, they burnt it down. Was it 3 years? No, not 3 years. It was 2015, wasn't it?
2015, yeah, the deal was reached the summer of 2015, and then 2018, I think May of 2018.
I'm trying to figure out the months. I'm trying to figure out if it even reached 3 years, because I know it was summer.
Almost 3 years. Almost 3 years.
It wasn't even 3 years exactly. So like after all that work, after all that, fuck the guy, because I'm sick of him by now. But Javad Zarif's entire life's work was that fucking bad job. And they shat on it. They used it as toilet paper and they laughed and they imposed even more painful sanctions. And in the meantime, they did the most petty shit, like kick the kids out of the Iranian UN delegation, kick them out of school. Okay, that's one example of how they spit on Iranians. And there's a fucking section of our population that thinks, oh man, what if we just give them what they want?
Or as Pezeshkian says, just peace and tranquility. That's all we want.
Oh, so sick of this shit, man. Our liberals are just as stupid as fucking Western liberals, but they do so much more damage. I guess Western libs do a lot of damage too.
No, man, this is the problem of when you think that you have more in common with white people than your own neighbors, or even the native people, like Native Americans say. I think Iranians have more in common with them than they do with any European or white American. But that when
Iranians routinely call them Redskins in Persian.
Yeah. I mean, although in Persian it doesn't really carry the same connotations. But yeah, so but basically, when you affiliate with white people this much, you think that you're gonna become part of the club, and you can, like Zarif did, go give nice interviews and look very civilized, and then they're gonna bring you within the club. But no, it's just they're not gonna do that, and it's just so much naivety on the part of these people.
I was reading a biography of Nader Shah. And sorry?
He was an Afsharid. He ruled the Afsharid dynasty. Afshariya.
Yeah. And you just you wonder about the sort of the problems they faced, and you the same crises pop up, the same issues, Nasruddin Shah being obsessed with the West.
Oh wait, Nader Shah or Nader Shah?
Nasruddin Shah. That's what I mean.
The Qajar king. Okay.
Yeah, Qajar guy. I was thinking of the Qajar guy. When you said it, I was like, what? And then I realized I misspoke. But Nasruddin Shah, you think of him gallivanting around Europe, and then 150 years later, you see Javad Zarif gallivanting around just being feted by the worst kind of liberal scum, imperialist scum. And you think, have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing in this time? Did you not learn the same lessons that fucker did about the West and how they will treat you and how they will stomp on you more when you accede to them? Like, did you not learn anything in this period of time? And I just think that there is a section of our populace that says like, yeah, just give them what they want, and I want my MTV, like just give me what we want. I want to be like them. This is like the classic colonial problem. I guess the question is, and you're more, I don't think much more, but you're infinitely more than me. But I don't know how much that actually means. But you're more of in a place to tell me where the numbers come down on that division. Like how much of the country is Westoid leading? How much of the country does believe in resistoid stuff? I mean, I don't think you can actually answer that question. Nobody can.
No, and that's the problem. It's like one is that the polling data in Iran is not as strong as a place like the U.S. where they're always doing polling. And also, I mean, if you have polling data, the question is whether it's accurate. I mean, we've seen like how election polling works, and a lot of times it's not even accurate at predicting the outcome. So I haven't seen polling data, but just anecdotally and based on my studies of Iranian history, I mean, it's hard to give like clear demographics. But I would say there is a sizable population that's very much opposed to Western colonialism, but there's also a sizable population that's very pro-West and naive about colonialism. And this actually goes back, I mean, mentioning history and mentioning Nasser-Eddin Shah and the Qajar dynasty, this actually goes back to the 19th century, because when Iranian intellectuals first encounter European colonialism, they're very naive about it, and kind of their perception, they don't have a critical perception the same way,
They have no clue. They have
they
no
don't, exactly.
clue what they're dealing with. Even until the end of the Qajars, they were doing that shit. Even until and to this day, the Qajars are still doing that shit. Fucking Rajavi is a fucking Qajar. And they're still getting used by the West.
No, so I mean, and that naivety I think has lived on, and I think one of the things I was trying to do at the University of Tehran was, I mean, there is actually a good portion of the university that is like post-colonial leaning, and they do critical studies, courses, research on colonialism. But there's also a major current that's just like, they're like, we don't care. It's either that we don't care, or like I mentioned earlier, that we want to be like the colonialist. Why can't we be like the French? So instead of saying the moral problem and say that, well, our country has chosen the right moral path and it's on the right side of history, to use that overused expression, instead of that, they're like, what can we do to actually become like the French or the British or the Americans? And I think that has that historical genealogy in the late Qajar and the late 19th century history, because when you look at those intellectuals, the modernist intellectuals, they were very much naive about colonialism. Like you said, they had no clue, or if they had a clue about it, their whole idea was that, well, might makes right, and if you have the power, just take it. And this is very bad. But I think what is brilliant about Iranian history is the period in the 1960s and the 1970s, when you have the Non-Aligned movement, you have the protest movement against the Shah, and you have a major intellectual current that, despite all the criticism that we can direct against us, such as, the nativists and the cultural authenticity that you can problematize in some ways, they still had a very strong anti-imperialist currents. People like Ali Shariati, like Jalal Ahmad, and many others. Ayatollah Mutahari is another example. Ayatollah Khomeini himself. And there's a very strong anti-imperialist current within both the ulama and the secular intellectuals. And we have really lost that. I think that has kind of gone away after the revolution, unfortunately, because the intellectual culture in Iran is, unlike the US and unlike Canada, intellectual culture is defined in opposition to the state. And because the state is anti-colonial now, the dominant intellectual culture tends to not care about colonialism that much.
I mean, this is it's a strange irony, is that like the ability of the Iranian Revolution and its consequences of liberating Iran's oil resources from parasitic Western domination and like comprador, siphoning of whatever's there's left. The fact that they unleashed to as much extent as they could, and also with all the failures included, that they were able to funnel Iran's immense natural wealth to larger swaths of the population in the forms of infrastructure. And Iran did, in fact, take a leap forward in the time of the Islamic Republic, a massive leap forward, not just in terms of its, like urban infrastructure development. Like the Tehran subway is like a marvel. it's like a marvel. I think people forget this. Like people think, of this, like, and like these are like, you can't. I have arguments with my Gusano relatives about this, and I was like, you can't just say like all the good things of Iran. You have to also say that, like, if you're going to highlight the bad things, you also have to take responsibility and account for the good things, right? That, like, oh, did the subway just build itself? Did the subway, like? And now I sound like the guy who's like, oh, Hitler made the trains. That's what the lib would say. Hitler made the trains run on time. Like, I sound like that, but I mean in the sense that, like, this 40-year period, 50 years, my God, 45 now, I guess. We're coming up to we're in 5 decades, but we're going to be 50 years, what, in 5 years or 4 years. And this has been a remarkable time for Iranian history, painful, but also one of immense growth, population growth, but also growth of cities, vast. And on top of that, ironically, and this is like a historical irony that I think is, like, I pointed out many times before, and lots of people has, and it's obvious, is that being besieged makes you stronger because it can make you stronger because it forces you to develop your own natural resources, your own native talents. So Iranians, that's part of the reason why we have such a huge immigrant class, is because the West sees Iran as a source of cheap, educated labor. Like, the amount of Iranian educated minds, like the Iranian, like Islamic Republic era trained minds who have now made careers in the West, who are like running the fucking sewer system in Toronto. I know this for a fact. Like, I knew like an Iranian engineer dude who like works for Iranian, like, who like helps manage the sewer system. Like, that one dude saved, the Canadian government, in the sense, the Canadian state, tens of thousands of dollars, possibly hundreds, in training this kid in university fees and whatever. That frees up one more spot, whatever. Now they have so many spots that they have to give them away to fake, international students.
No.
Not fake.
No, I mean, here I want to draw my experience, what you mentioned about Iran actually achieving a lot despite many shortcomings too. But I mean, the metro system is amazing. It's very clean, very quiet, it's very fast. There are no delays. Because I remember when I was in New York, there were so many times when I would get on the subway and the subway would just stop for like 20, 30 minutes. And then, you would just have to wait. But the metro in Tehran is very efficient, comes on time. It's not well maintained right now. I mean, initially, like 10 years ago, it was amazing. But now they have some like ventilation problems in the wagons. And also there's a problem of overcrowdedness. And that's, I think, a broader problem in global South cities where like they're not managed well or planned well, where, just like certain areas of the metro get so overcrowded that you basically have to like sandwich in. It's not like the Toronto. Toronto has a subway, right?
Dude, Toronto is a freaking disaster system, buddy. The Iranians, I'm sure there are Iranians who like gripe about Iran, and then they come to Toronto, they're like, oh my God, I'd rather have the Iranian system than this.
Yeah, I mean, the public transit in many American cities are awful too. But yeah, I mean, my point is that the metro itself is good. Rather, it's the poor planning of the city that leads to the overcrowdedness. But in putting the metro aside, because that's just one example, and like you said, we don't want to sound like the guy who defends Hitler. But one is the Human Development Index in Iran has been high since the revolution. If you look at the UN data, and it's higher than, I mean, again, mentioning Jordan and Egypt, it's much higher than Jordan and Egypt that, has peace deals with Israel. But also, I mean, because I've been living in Pakistan, and in Pakistan, what you see is that most of the stuff that you're buying at the supermarkets, I mean, minus if you go to the guys who have the carts on the street, a lot of those things are locally produced. But if you go to a supermarket, most things are imported from the UAE, from, Europe, from other countries. Whereas in Iran, if I go to a supermarket, almost everything is domestically produced. So I can get the Iranian cheese, the Iranian milk, the Iranian, popcorn, pofak that you mentioned. So the thing is, when you're sanctioned, you can actually live. I mean, it might not be easy, but you live and you have this alternative local production. But if, a country like Pakistan is sanctioned the way Iran is, they're going to have much more difficulty because they don't have as robust of a domestic production. Like, Iran is even making fridges, TVs now. I mean, I think some parts are coming from China, but they're doing much of the domestic production when it comes to fridges, to TVs. And of course, I mean, they're not going to be able to be as good as the LG or a Samsung, but they still get the job done. I mean, they still, you can still watch TV in HD quality, and the TV is probably going to last you several years. So, I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, in that sense, Iran has had those accomplishments since the revolution, even though, I mean, yeah, of course, it's not going to be as competitive of a quality as a global production that we see in countries, I don't know, like China and Korea. But still, I mean, it still gets the job done.
Oh, Navid, we notwithstanding our pauses, we've gone on for 2 hours and 15 minutes. Did you know that?
Oh God, yeah, that's very long.
We
So
gotta wrap it up. Too much blah blah blah.
yeah. So I think with the pauses, this was about 2 hours, and I think we could even release it in. But should we do like a proper ending or?
Yeah, this will be the ending. I'm too tired. Oh, I used up all my English again. It's hard. It's hard talking about Iran, man. It's hard talking about Iran. There's like a lot of.
I know, and I was playing this episode more as kind of like a regional, global discussion, but I think Iran was at the center again. But I think that's fine because we're both Iranian, so naturally the conversation will go in that direction. But yeah, I learned a lot, and again, I think we have some disagreements. But this is Sina Control Media, so I'm not gonna push too hard.
I'm gonna edit out everything you said that was wrong.
Okay. Yeah, and then
No, I actually, I think here's my like deep anxiety aside from the big anxiety, which is, nuclear bombs going off by like the dozens in Iranian cities, because like that's the beast we face. It's more that that in reality, like the dark reality is that like the internet that Iranians participate on, that they communicate with their relatives and with the outside world, that it is an internet controlled by Washington, which ultimately means that it's filtered through Tel Aviv, that every WhatsApp message, every iMessage, is farmed for any potential useful intel, that their superiorities in signal intelligence, they call it, that those are very formidable because they're able to identify at the microscopic level of our society, which is to say people, the characters, the unsavory characters who have the ability to do immense amount of damage to Iran. Not just like literally in the sense of, agents who can plant a sort of spike bomb or whatever, like a spike missile or whatever. It's not even just that. It's more the fact that their ability to wage psychological warfare in convincing Iranians that their resistance is futile, and that's the danger, and the feeling that and like I'm such a child, but I'm going to do this. Like in civilization, you can get like a cultural victory. Like the West may, I worry that like any military victory that like will be painfully fought will be preceded or ruined by a cultural victory, which will convince Iranians that it wasn't worth it, that like facing down this demon wasn't worth it. And unfortunately, I have to say to like that Iranian who feels that way, it's like, let me tell you, buddy, not facing them down and having them steamroll you, like it's worth it. Like it's going to be a lot worse when they steamroll you. You think you have problems now? Like wait till KFC shows up, the real KFC, not the Iranian version, which is like 10. Like wait till like the American way of life shows up for you, and then you'll see misery. Then you'll see a society torn asunder. And I don't know. That's my sort of general vibe for this conversation. And I think ultimately, like they're gonna come again. They need to wage a war on Iran. They have to. I don't think they have a choice.
Yeah, and this is my sad prediction too. That I think this might be the calm before the storm, and I don't think Iran established full deterrence during the 12-day war. And this is one of the criticism that they got the leadership, that why did you stop and accepted the ceasefire where you could have continued to devastate Israel and establish deterrence. But yeah, we have to wait and see. And honestly, I mean, sometimes I think kind of like what you were hinting at. It's really we're just like reduced to mere spectators at times. I mean, we could have our media talk, the academic, conferences. But at the end of the day, it's the resistance on the ground that does the work, and in a way, you're just a spectator. And it can get very, very discouraging and demoralizing in that sense. And I mean, this is how I felt during the 12 days because I wasn't even in Iran at the time, and I just felt like a spectator that couldn't do much, and just seeing the barbarity of the situation, and also the absurdity that you're negotiating. In the middle of the negotiation, you start bombing Iran, and then you start gaslighting the Iranians that, oh, why do you have uranium, why do you, and the IAEA, that was the most bizarre part. I mean, the IAEA, which is basically Western backed organization that Iran alleges gave also the Iran's files to Israel that assisted the assassination of a nuclear scientist. I mean, they were also being absurd in that situation, and they're like, oh, let's go inspect the Iranian nuclear sites now. I mean, yeah, the whole thing was just, yeah. But this is where actually my belief in God comes, because I mean, talking about how you're secular and not religious. You said that earlier, but at the end of the day, I think when you have faith in God and the hereafter, that also calms you in a sense. And this is what I really admire. I mean, I don't have the same religious subjectivity as, say, the Ansarullah do or the Shia resistance fighters do. But I think at the end of the day, those guys, I mean, they can really lead the resistance because they believe in God and martyrdom in the way that our, us, like, secularized kids in U.S. and Canada would never be able to have. And that's what I really admire about them, and hoping the best for the region, and the Iranian, Yemeni, Lebanese, Palestinian, and Syrian people.
I mean, I will say this, that the one thing that they achieved was resolving, I would say that their actions and the fact that they were kind of, maybe they're not, but the kind of culminating series of like increasing of like, of all these expansion of this war, which is to say that like they're pushing out, that anyone to this day who is like let's say your former students who's talking about like human rights and making a deal with the West, and like those people were going to be laughed out of the room now in a place like University of Tehran. Like I would say is that there's been a lot of harm done to the liberal Iranian argument, which is just make a deal with the West and this will all be over. And clearly it won't be over. Even when you do negotiate, they still go at you. And so it may be, I mean, if you listen to Pezeshkian on Tucker Carlson, they haven't learned that they still are talking about like negotiations. But what do you do? Like, I think I will say this, that that there is a section of Iranians who need to hear that. They need to hear that they tried to like negotiate and they tried to be like a good faith actor. I don't know how big that population is now. I imagine it's smaller than it was before the 12-day war, that there was a sector of the Iranian population that just said, okay, make a deal, like just do that, or at least try to make a deal, do some chune for us, and let's see what we can get. And, and those people have no leg to stand on. Like if I was in a domestic Iranian, like if I was just sitting there looking at things and be like, well, clearly this is pointless. Clearly there's actually no point to talking to these people because look what they'll do. So that might be one strange, ironic accomplishment of uniting Iranians more than any popular figure, probably since Khomeini, actually. And like in a way, like, the IDF and Donald Trump and like a host of Iranian agents united, a small number, but a big enough number to cause a serious amount of damage, probably united tens of millions of Iranians in a way that I thought would be impossible. So that's an interesting development. And I'm actually doing an episode with two Iranians who are based in Iran soon. We're supposed to do one today, but they lost internet. So sadly, Iranian infrastructural issues got in the way, but we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. But thank you, Navid. We should probably wrap up here. I'm going to give myself the closing word because this is Sina controlled media. No, but really, you get the closing word. Tell us more about your show. Say a little bit about your show. People who don't know about your show, who are listening to this on East is a Podcast, tell them a little bit about it.
Yeah. So basically, I think, like you said, we're double posting this, and I think everybody's familiar with East is a Podcast. It's podcast that has been around for a while. I remember when I met you, I think it was back in 2019. You had just started it. I think it's grown substantially over the years, and we all love listening to it. But my program is a bit newer and it's less audio based; it's more video based. Our main platforms right now are YouTube and Instagram. Mainly the YouTube channel. We do video content. Although we might expand to audio platform at some point. We started it earlier this year in January. And it's an intersection of basically current events and history, because I'm a historian, academic. So I try to bring that training into it. And I do certain monologues on current events, but tie it to historical issues. And eventually I might also do more historical episodes where I talk more about historical events as opposed to what is happening today. But for now, it's more the intersection of current events and history, and the main theme is colonialism and the politics of empire and resistance. And I think here we have a strong marriage between East is a podcast and the Colony Archive, with the only difference that we don't have group tanky therapy.
That's true. We'll do. You got to start your own tanky therapy, Colony Archive, tanky therapy, friend porn genre, subgenre. We like it. We want it. The people. I'll be one of your recurring guests.
I still want the funds from the Carnegie Endowment for the Humanities, so I ain't gonna do that just yet.